Hello everyone, Father Scott Vanderveer here as we begin a new book with our small groups, 33 Days to Eucharistic Glory. It's about consecrating ourselves to the Eucharist, and that's such a countercultural idea. It might be new for a lot of us to consider consecrating ourselves. We think of priests as consecrated, sisters and monks as consecrated. We think of people who live in cloisters as consecrated, but all of us? Consecration is an act of making ourselves available, giving ourselves completely to something that is worthy of that. And so it would not be good to say, you can have all of me to anyone other than God. Consecration is such a lowering of our limitations. It's such a complete abandonment of self. You would never want to do it lightly. And you would never want to do it for something that was not worthy of the gift of 100% of a person's energies. That is why I'm honored to be a consecrated person whose life has been set apart for God's service. But you don't have to be someone who is ordained to be able to be consecrated. Consecration is a giving of ourselves to something worthy. 100% availability is one of the ways that the author of this book, Matthew Kelly, talks about it. And there is probably nothing in the earth more worth investing ourselves completely in than the idea that God is here among us and can be accessed anytime through the gift of the Eucharist. I think in this first part of the book, the introduction, where we're allowing ourselves to have a frame set up for this, a beginning to the reason for why we would make this journey, I was really taken with some of the bleak statistics of where we have been as a Catholic community over the past several generations. The fact that so many people now have stopped practicing their faith, and that so many of them who have considered returning to the faith something that is outside of the realm of possibility. They're not imagining returning. I thought it was hard to hear that in the past 35 years, a parish has closed every 3 days in the United States of America. Every 3 days, a parish closes. Every 4 days, we learned, a Catholic school closes in America. That's been true for the past 25 years. And every day, the church loses a priest. Every day. Some because of retirement. Others because they've died. Others because they've chosen to leave. And others because they've been asked to leave. That combination of statistics really stopped me in my tracks. That's a church in true crisis. I also know that the other facts that Matthew Kelly offers are also true, that people are joining the Catholic Church in large numbers. Our baptisms are numerous here at St. Mary's and all over the world. But on a whole, in the United States of America and in North America in general, and in North America and Europe, those big Catholic places that are on either side of the Atlantic and were always the cradle of the Catholic faith, especially Europe, the birthplace of the Catholic faith, the home to the headquarters in Rome. We're seeing a record decline in church practicing, in faith being a major part of people's lives. That is being made up for in the global South, where the church is growing by leaps and bounds in places like Africa and Latin America. It has been noted that whenever the world is experiencing prosperity, belief in God wanes. Whenever we're experiencing long periods of time of prosperity, we humans seem to think that we're the ones who have done it. We stop giving God credit when things have been easy and predictable for a long period of time. When we encounter hard times, we become really crystal clear that we can do nothing without God's help. But when things are going well, we start to mistakenly believe that we're doing it ourselves. So, it strikes me that Matthew Kelly's assertion that it is people who believe that the Eucharist is the true presence of God in our lives, it's those people who never leave the church. Those people never leave the church. And that does not mean that they are more satisfied with how things are going in the church than other people. In many cases, they're just as dissatisfied with let's say, the poor music in their church or the lack of welcome. They're just as dissatisfied that so many priests' homilies feel improvised and unprepared. They're just as unhappy with some of the lackadaisical, lackluster, lifeless participation of people. All of that affects them just as much. But they don't leave. In fact, they would never leave because they know that access to the Eucharist is the most important thing in their lives. That connection to God's presence in the world, that gift that connects directly back to God coming to walk and live among us, and for Jesus to have given his life out of love and risen in hope, and then to have shared himself fully through the Eucharist. That is something that makes every other thing about church tolerable. We can figure out anything else as long as we have the Eucharist. Maybe you've heard me say before that my dear friend and mentor, Sister Mary Frances, who died a couple of years ago, used to say that when she found the Catholic faith, a faith she converted to before she became a sister of St. Francis, when she found the Catholic faith, she knew that she'd come home because of the Eucharist. And she said it was very painful for her to hear Catholics, well-meaning Catholics, say something that all of us understand immediately as soon as we hear it. She heard Catholics say sometimes, "I left that parish," or "I stopped going to church because I just wasn't getting fed." She heard people say, I used to like church, but Father so-and-so is a bad homilist, or the music has been terrible, or the people are unwelcoming, and I wasn't getting fed, so I left. And she said, I can't bear to hear Catholics say that they're not being fed. She said, you are being fed with the finest nourishment. You are being fed with God's own presence. If you want to say that the music is lousy, if you want to say that the preaching is not good enough, if you want to say that it's not welcoming, fair enough. Fair critique in many cases. But please, she said, please do not say you're not being fed. Those words do not belong in the mouth of any Catholic who receives the Eucharist. Whew. So, Matthew Kelly quotes Goethe, the great German philosopher, and he quotes this idea that you have to start boldly. But what I like about that quote is actually another sense that Goethe has. Goethe says that people expect grace to lead and then they will follow. And he said grace doesn't work like that. You have to jump first and let grace catch you. That's what Matthew Kelly was getting at when he said we have to be bold. It means we have to take a risk and let grace then meet us. We have to leap and then let grace lift us up. We have to let go of the trapeze bar we're holding on to and allow grace to tell us that there will be a next bar to reach for. That's the spirit that we use to begin this journey. That we don't wait for a door to open and then walk through it. We walk in the direction that we're being called to go and know that God will open a door. We'll make a door where it looks like there's just a wall and then open that door for us to walk through. The boldness that we need is a boldness that is so reliant on grace that we don't wait for it to appear in order to trust in it. We move forward knowing that grace will be there to meet us. So, as we begin this, let us remember that grace will meet us if we move boldly, that God is with us in the Eucharist, and that if God is with us, what could ever defeat us? If God is for us, who could be against us and prevail? With that spirit, let us begin. May God bless you all.